I'm a businessman. First foremost, I want no further conflict with him.
You tell him from me that he can live or he can die.
Vincent, will you shut up? Just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in.
Michael Corleone attempts to make his business fully legitimate, but he finds that it's not easy for a gangster to retire. Listen as we chat about a comical death by cannoli, a deeply disturbing romance, and just how fat the voice of Fat Tony really is. Just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in and make me find out if the Godfather Part III stands the test of time.
Test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today? James says gladiator with a glutton. Alan says as a father, blah blah. It's the test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today? Test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Test of Time. My name is Alan Noah, and joining me for the 299th time is my buddy James Brief.
299 times I've said, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Test of Time, or some derivation of that.
Indeed.
You know, Al, we've done around 300 of these things. Do you know what we've done around a dozen times?
Nick's Marathon.
That is correct. Do you know what we're doing this weekend, Al?
Nick's Marathon.
My third question is, what the hell is Nick's Marathon?
Well, I'm very glad you asked. So Nick's Marathon is the other thing that you and I do together. It is a charity that we run. It is named after our friend Nicholas Capobianco, who passed away from leukemia. And what we do every year is we get together and we play video games and we raise money in Nick's name. And we actually didn't hold the event in 2021 because of COVID, and we were going to do it in January, and then we postponed it because of COVID. And so the real date of Nick's Marathon is March 25th to March 27th, 2022. And if you're listening to this podcast episode right away, then that's right now. So this weekend, you can watch us at nicksmarathon.org. James and I and friends of ours are going to be playing video games all weekend. We'll live stream everything at nicksmarathon.org, where you can watch us, you can chat with us, you can make fun of us, you can tell us how terrible we are at Mario Kart or whatever the hell we're playing. And if you're so inclined, if you're able, you can make a tax-deductible donation that goes to a great cause.
You can also join us if you want to play with us. Just tweet at us at Nick's Marathon. You can even tweet at Test of Time, and Al will still see that.
I will, but this weekend I'll be checking the Nick's Marathon stuff more.
But he loves when you tweet him at Test of Time pod, so...
I do, but I love when people tweet us at Nick's Marathon too. I love all of it. We also have a change of venue. We are going to be doing Nick's Marathon at my house on Long Island for the very first time. Every other time we've ever done it, it's been at your apartment. Or actually, I guess in 2020, it was at everyone's place because we did a remote version, and that was your place and my place and everyone else's place. But yeah, this is the first time we're going to be doing it fully here at my house because your apartment is having some work done and it wasn't conducive to 20 smelly guys hanging out in your apartment playing video games.
No, but I'm going to tell you something right now. Originally, we were going to do this early in January, and because I knew there was going to be renovation, I had a whole plan. I was going to cordon off like a quarter of the apartment, put down some painters, those plastic tarps, and I was going to let people like spray paint and tag the walls. It was going to be a lot of fun.
Oh, man. We can still do that next time in your newly renovated apartment, right?
Absolutely. There's no not. Absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Furniture these days is all paint-proof, right?
We'll find out.
Let's find out.
Hopefully everyone will not trash my house the way we always trash your apartment.
I'm bringing the flaming Cheetos with extra dust.
No, don't bring that.
I'm bringing just a bowl of Cheetos dust and I'm bringing one of those Vornado fans.
No, don't bring those two things together. I do like Flamin' Hot Cheetos, though. It's going to be a really fun weekend. Watch us. If you do happen to be listening to this podcast episode later than March 25th through March 27th, 2022, that's okay. You can still go to nixmarathon.org and make a tax-deductible donation. You just won't be able to watch us play video games live, but that serves you right for not listening to the podcast episode right away. So, lesson learned for you.
Aren't you matching every donation up to $2 billion, Al?
No, that is incorrect.
Oh, okay. I thought I heard that somewhere.
No, you just made that up right now.
Oh, okay.
But let's talk about The Godfather Part III. This is the movie that caps off the Godfather trilogy and is not as universally beloved as Part 1 and Part 2. I read some article, I forget exactly how they worded it. It was something about The Godfather's 50th anniversary, and it was something like, The Godfather is a beloved classic, as is its sequel, The Godfather Part 2. Also, there was a third part. You know, like, it's just like this complete afterthought. And I guess in theory, we didn't have to review it right now, but I was curious to watch it again just to see why people hate it so much. And it's got Al Pacino and it's got Diane Keaton and Talia Shire and it's directed by Francis Ford Coppola. I just figured it was worth watching.
You know, this film is also interesting from our perspective because I remember this coming out during Christmas of 1990. A lot of things were like, oh, it's coming out so far after the first two films. And we just talked about a film called The Matrix Resurrections. That was released in 2021. And The Matrix Revolutions was released in 2003. So this is 18 years later that film came out. Godfather Part 2 came out in 1974. Part 3 came out in 1990. That's 16 years. You know, in modern times, it's not that crazy. I mean, Blade Runner came out, a sequel that really no one asked for, but that sequel, Blade Runner 2049, that came out 40 years after the last one. I just found it interesting looking back on it now. I remember thinking this is so far out. It's like making a sequel to The Ten Commandments or Wizard of Oz, like an old film. I'm just saying the practice is done very often these days. Direct sequels to things that are like 20 years or older.
Yeah, it happens all the time now. I feel like every day there's another like article I see about, oh, they're working on a Beetlejuice 2. Top Gun Maverick is coming out this year. Like, they do that all the time now.
I just found that interesting. So to get that out of the way, that was one criticism that doesn't really hold up. That's just at least what I vaguely remember when this film came out. Like, why is this coming out, Part 3? It's so long ago.
Well, I think the answer to that question is because they all just kind of wanted to make some more money. And
not some money, Al. Those first two films, they made gangbusters, godfathers of money.
Oh, that was terrible.
No, that wasn't that funny.
That was. You should be ashamed of yourself.
I am ashamed of myself.
Good. But before we get into that, let's talk about what the movie itself is about. It takes place in 1979, and the Corleone family has gone legitimate. Michael has sold all of his interests in gambling and violence, but he still reels from the guilt brought upon himself after he ordered the murder of his brother Fredo. When a real estate deal with the Vatican makes Michael think that he can bring himself and his family redemption, he finds that exiting the mob isn't as simple as he wished. So when this movie came out in 1990, I believe it was far less successful than its predecessors, right?
Well, I mean, it was still very successful. So I was actually surprised to see how successful it was. And the film had a much larger budget than the others. But, you know, I don't know what the comparable budget would be in 1974. But this film had a $55 million budget. That's a big budget for 1990.
Yeah.
And it took in $136.9 million domestically. So I would say it's probably a pretty profitable film. It opened at number 3 with $6.3 million. And the number 1 film that weekend partially was about suspected brain tumors in educators.
It's not a tumor.
Well, I mean, there was a suspicion. Maybe it's a tumor.
It's not a tumor.
Kindergarten Cop.
Correct, yes. I kind of think that's funny that, like, the sequel to, like, a Best Picture followed by Best Picture, and then this film released also Best Picture, nominated for Best Picture, and a ton of Academy Awards. And Kindergarten Cop beat it.
I mean, that was just what people needed to see at that time, I guess.
And the opening of the film, it really connects it to the Godfather Part II. It shows the Corleone mansion. It kind of looks like it's in a little disarray. I don't know if it's abandoned or it's not the peak of luxury that it was in the first two films. And there's a flashback of sorts reminding the viewer of the death of Fredo at the hand of Michael Corleone. And, kind of juxtaposes that he is this now pious man who has done, what is one of the worst sins you could do. I guess killing your kid might be worse, or your parent, but your brother is pretty high up there.
Yeah. But the movie kind of starts like the first two movies do, with this big family celebration. In the first movie, it's Connie's wedding, and the second movie, it's Michael's son's communion. And in this movie, it's Michael getting this award from the Vatican. He's being commended for his charity work. And Michael is now not a gangster, he is legitimate. And you know that he's legitimate because he says the word legitimate a lot. Like if you were going to do a Godfather Part III drinking game, take a shot every time Michael says that he's gone legitimate, you will be extraordinarily drunk very, very quickly.
We meet a new character in this film, Vincent, played by Andy Garcia. He's Michael's nephew, and we didn't know this character beforehand, but it turns out he's Sonny's, I guess you can call him his bastard son. He had some mistress or something, and Vincent, it was the result of that affair.
It's from actually the scene in the first movie where Sonny is having sex with one of Connie's bridesmaids at the wedding. In the beginning part of Godfather Part 1, like you see him like having sex with her in some room. Apparently in that tryst, that is where Vincent was conceived. Not that that really matters, but we do see Sonny having sex with someone who isn't his wife in the first movie. So you can buy the fact that he has an illegitimate child. We also meet Michael's adult children. We see them as like little kids in Part 2, but here they are as adults, and the son is Anthony and the daughter is Mary. Mary is played by Sofia Coppola, Francis Ford Coppola's real life daughter.
And yeah, let's talk about this casting right now. It was famously supposed to be Winona Ryder. Mm-hmm. For whatever reason, she dropped out. And there's a couple other names they went through, and ultimately it fell upon Francis Ford Coppola to cast somebody, and he cast his daughter, Sofia Coppola. I don't know how old Sofia Coppola was here, but she's very young. I would be surprised if she's 20 years old. And you will not find a 1 or 2 sentence criticism of this film that does not involve her performance.
Yeah, she was 19. I just looked it up. For me, it's not just that, like, she's not a great actor in this movie. It's also just her whole arc, which begins in this beginning scene, which is that when she meets her cousin Vincent, she flirts with him. And their relationship is a big part of this movie, and it's a romantic relationship. And they are first cousins. The fact that Vincent was born out of wedlock doesn't change the fact that Vincent and Mary, their fathers, were brothers.
I totally agree. And this isn't even one of these Luke and Leia kind of things where they don't know, or they've done these stories in Game of Thrones where they don't realize they're related, and then they are attracted, and oh, that's why they're attracted, because they're related. And no, they have to kind of be told at some point in this film, like, you shouldn't be with Mary. It's a weird thing that doesn't need to be there.
Exactly. But we see that Michael's son, Anthony, wants to not be in the family business. He's in law school. He doesn't even want to do that. He wants to sing. And Michael disapproves of that. He thinks that his son should at least be a lawyer. He should do something that's, more grounded and he can have a real honest job. But Kay talks Michael into letting him leave law school and be a singer. And this is a big deal because in Part 2, Michael literally slams the door on Kay being in his family, being part of his life. We find out that they were divorced and Kay remarried. Michael still resents Kay and they haven't talked in many years, but he agrees to let his son do his own thing. Vincent also comes in to talk to Michael about his rival, Joey Zaza. Zaza now runs like the old Corleone mafia business because Michael's legitimate, but Vincent really doesn't like Zaza, and he says that Zaza is insulting Michael on the street, and Michael says, listen, I'm not involved in this world anymore. This is between the two of you. Can you just shake hands and forgive each other? And they do, but then Zaza kind of whispers bastardo to Vincent, and then Vincent bites his ear. It's almost like a Mike Tyson, Evander Holyfield kind of a thing, right? Like he's trying to rip off some cartilage there.
Oh, I was looking for Holyfield like ear. He doesn't actually rip off anything. It's just you see a tooth mark in there.
And as a huge Simpsons fan, I do have to mention that Joey Zaza is played by Joe Mantegna, who voices Fat Tony on The Simpsons. And it's kind of funny just like seeing that guy talk because I'm used to hearing his voice and seeing Fat Tony. And Mantegna's not fat in this movie. I don't know what he looks like today, but he's not overweight. He's a skinny little guy.
I've never known him as a fat guy. I mean, I don't watch the daily Joe Mantegna feed, but he never looked like Fat Tony. But I do like that he's kind of playing a Fat Tony type in this film.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. But later that night, Vincent's at home with a journalist who's trying to find out about Michael Corleone, played by Bridget Fonda, who's a babe. She looks great in this movie. But while they're in Vincent's apartment, two guys come in and try to kill Vincent. Vincent gets one of them to admit that it was Zaza who sent them. And now he's even more pissed and wants to kill Zaza even more.
I love this scene. And, this reminds me a little bit of a scene. We talked about it in Godfather Part 1. Like, why is Michael so kind to Connie's soon-to-be dead wife who beats him like, oh, calm down. I'm not going to kill you. Here's a ticket to Vegas. I'm not going to make my wife a widower. Just tell me who sent you, who set this up, who got Sonny killed. And then the moment he says him, very shortly after, I was brutally killed. And Vincent does the same thing. He basically goes, relax, guy, here, have a cigarette, man. I'm not going to hurt you. I just want to know who sent you. He is like shaking. He can barely put that cigarette in his mouth. And he's like, Joey, Zaza sent us. And then the second he says it, Vincent holds up the gun. He's like, no, don't do it. And then he shoots him like through the hand in his face. It's a pretty cool scene. I like this scene. I think Andy Garcia is well cast in this. I'm going to say that. I like him in this role.
Yeah. I mean, I think he doesn't have like the weight of a young Pacino or a young De Niro.
I don't think this part is necessarily written to the level of 1974 Pacino or De Niro.
Yeah, I'm not saying that it is. I'm just saying that, like, based on the fact that it's the third Godfather movie, he's going to be compared in that way. And yeah, it's not totally fair that he would be compared, but I'm just saying he's very good, but just not De Niro, Pacino level great. And that's an unfair comparison, but, whatever.
And now we get into, I guess, what is sort of the plot of this film. There's this sort of real estate deal with this conglomerate called Immobilieri International. And it's some kind of real estate business that the Vatican has like a 25% cut in. Something. Michael Corleone wants to invest in this deal. It will now thrust the Corleone family into being like the Medicis. I mean, I don't know if you know the Medicis.
No.
They're an Italian family. They basically invented banking. All modern banking is invented by the Medicis, and they're fabulously wealthy. He'll basically be one of the biggest real estate owners in the world after this deal.
Right. And it's like, it's a legitimate deal. It's a growth opportunity. He looks at it. But there are still like these lingering connections to his old mafia life.
Right. This is not a completely legit deal in that there are going to be some underhanded schemes behind the scenes here with this real estate deal. But, the idea is he's trying to do something that's a little legitimate.
Right. And so while he's trying to make this deal happen, Zaza and a lot of his old mafia friends, they want a taste. Michael's going to be making all this money. They want to make a little money too. And Michael doesn't want to do that. So he invites them all to Atlantic City, and he basically just hands everyone envelopes full of cash and says, look, you're not going to be a part of this deal, but you've made me money. I've made you money. I'm buying you out. Here's a whole lot of cash, and let's say our goodbyes and go our separate ways. And no hard feelings. And all of the guys who are there are happy, except for Joey Zaza, who doesn't get anything. And this is an insult. It's a slap in the face. And I didn't really understand why Michael does that, mainly because while Vincent's telling him, we have to kill Zaza, Zaza's the enemy, Michael's like, no, we don't need to kill him. It's fine. It's not a big deal. He's a low-level thug. It's not worth it. So if he's handing everybody cash to buy them off, why not just throw him an envelope full of cash? He's super rich already. Buy this guy off. He won't be a problem. But by not doing that, he insults him. And then shortly after that happens, Zaza leaves in a huff. Don Altobello, who's this old-timer guy who's trying to make the peace, he goes after Zaza. And then a helicopter comes down and opens fire into the room, killing everybody almost, except for Michael and Vincent and like maybe one or two other people. But, it seems clear that Zaza or Altobello orchestrated this hit. But, like the thing with Sonny's hit in the first movie, this had to have been pre-planned. It's not like something that could have just been called in at that moment.
Right. So once again, like the first two films, there is a traitor in the midst. We don't know who it is yet. And Vincent is Sonny's son, and Sonny was the hot-headed guy. So Vincent's, he's kind of hot-headed, and he wants to get revenge on Zaza. Michael, he's older, wiser. He doesn't want to be a violent guy anymore, and he doesn't want to go against Zaza. But Connie, Talia Shire, finally, they're giving her some juicy stuff to do.
Yep.
She's really getting her feet wet in this, and she's going over Michael's head, and she's giving Vincent the go-ahead. She's like, you should go take care of this.
Right, because Michael realizes that Altobello is the traitor, and he has like a diabetic attack, I guess? I don't know if that's the right word.
He's been trying the whole first half of this film. You're right. They say legitimate a lot of times. And then he has that line. He realizes, I can't go legitimate. And he has that, just when I try to come out, they pull me back in. And it's such a Pacino line. He delivers some great Pacino lines. There's a part where Vince is trying to say something and he goes, Vincent, will you shut up? And it's such a great Pacino line.
Yeah. See, a couple weeks ago, I said how I liked how young Pacino doesn't overact in Godfather Part 1. He doesn't really do it in Part 2 either. In this movie, he starts doing it, and I don't love it. I don't think he needs to. I feel like there's a fine line between acting and showing anger and just like yelling. And I feel like this is just Pacino yelling.
Oh, I agree with you. I think by 1990, he was doing almost an impression of Michael Corleone from the films people had seen so much. I'm just saying it's a great Pacino.
Yeah, I get it. But like he passes out and he's in the hospital and Connie kind of like takes over and starts giving orders. So that clears the way for Vincent to kill Zaza. It's at a parade. It's sort of like the scene with Don Fanucci in Godfather 2. It also looks like there are Klansmen in this parade. Like there's people wearing like white hoods. Maybe they're not supposed to be Klansmen. I don't know, but there's people wearing white hoods that certainly look like Klansmen to me. And then it's like it's part of the assassination attempt because one of the guys like rips off his hood and he's like, ha, and shoots Zaza or one of his goons or whatever.
Well, Vincent kills Zaza.
Right. So I guess he must kill someone else. But there was some guy wearing a white hood in this parade. And this movie is taking place in 1979, 1980. I can't imagine that there would be like hooded Klansmen walking down a parade in New York City in Little Italy.
The only thing I could imagine, and I didn't particularly pick that up, the only thing I can imagine is it's one of these, you know how there's like swastika-like things that are not swastikas? I would imagine maybe there was some kind of Italian, the Catholic kind of outfit that looks like that, maybe.
Maybe. Meanwhile, there is more of Vincent and Mary like flirting and getting together. It's also extra creepy because in the scene when they first kiss, they keep calling each other cuz, like over and over again. It's like, you look good today, cuz. Thanks, cuz. Hey, can you help me make this gnocchi, cuz? Sure, cuz. I love you, cuz. I love you too, cuz. And then they start making out. It's not even that like they're trying to forget about the fact that they're cousins. They keep talking about it over and over again.
It's weird. There's no payoff for that. I mean, I guess it's that Michael has a reason. There could be a million reasons Michael doesn't want Vincent to be with Mary.
Well, the reason that they keep saying over and over again is that it's dangerous. And that's true in the sense that it's dangerous for Mary to be with someone like Vincent because Vincent is a mob boss and he's violent and people hate him and will want to kill him and things like that. So it is true that it's dangerous for Mary to be with him. It's kind of like the drinking game about legitimate. They refer to their relationship as dangerous a lot more than they use the word wrong. Eventually, Michael says, this is wrong. You guys are cousins and you shouldn't be together. The bigger concern is it's dangerous for you to be with this guy. And it kind of feels like really the bigger problem, though, is it's wrong for you to be with this guy. I'm being very judgy about romantic relationships among first cousins. I don't know. I just feel like that's pretty fucking creepy.
A little bit. The film pivots a little bit, goes to Italy now. There's a meeting in Sicily with Don Tomasino. We also get some meeting at the Vatican, and they're talking more about these deals, and there's a new guy that's going to be the new pope. And Michael meets with Cardinal Umberto, and he does something that he's done the first time, and he says the first time in 30 years, he's doing a confession. And he confesses to the one thing that just Michael can't get over, and that's, of course, he's rattled with guilt about Fredo's murder. And Lamberto accepts the confession, and there is, some hope for Michael because he says, following Catholic dogma, that even though you are going to suffer for your sins, there is a possibility of redemption. Perhaps because Michael is so remorseful of it, and he's genuinely confessing, I feel like the cardinal is giving him like a slight possibility of redemption for his soul, if you will.
Maybe, yeah. I think some of this stuff with Michael and his feelings of guilt and his working towards redemption are pretty interesting. The problem is, though, that a lot of that is kind of mired in like this immobiliare deal, which is also still going on. And is it a good deal? Is it a bad deal? Is it a deal that Michael wants? Is it a swindle? Are they conning him out of all of his money? Now we have said this 3 weeks in a row, but I found this to be very confusing. I didn't really get it. I didn't understand what was happening. But basically, Vincent goes undercover with Don Altobello. Michael tells him to and says, you're going to go in with him and find out what's going on with this deal. There's this other guy, Lucchesi, who's basically like the one who is like the real evil mastermind, I guess. I don't fully get it. But basically, Altobello and Lucchesi, they hire a hitman who's going to go after Michael and kill him in order to kill the deal, I guess. I think.
I have to admit, the Mobiliari deal, this part is very confusing. And I didn't quite understand the intricacies of this deal.
Okay, well, that makes me feel a little bit better that it wasn't just me.
Yeah. You talked about in the first film a couple weeks ago how Diane Keaton, who's a great actress, but she doesn't get much to do in the first film. Second film, she definitely has a couple real meaty scenes. But in the third film, they definitely give her a lot of dialogue. And her and Michael, she kind of forgives him, and they kind of still love each other. And aw.
I don't know that she forgives him. She admits that she loves him, and she always will. But I don't know if there's forgiveness there. She says at the beginning of the movie that she dreads him. And Michael says that he doesn't want her to dread him. They kind of share a little bit of a moment, but I don't know that there's forgiveness there. I'm not sure about that.
Maybe forgiveness isn't the right word, but this is people that they are very bitter divorced parents that now can be in the same room together, kind of thing.
Right. Yes, that is true. And then the old Pope dies, and Cardinal Umberto, who is the one who accepted Michael's confession, he becomes the new Pope, and they're going to go forward with the Immobiliare deal, but because the bad people in the Vatican don't like that deal, they decide to kill the new Pope, even though he's only been Pope for, I don't know, a week or two or something. They assassinate him with some tea. Meanwhile, Michael appoints Vincent the new Godfather. He says, you are no longer a bastard. You are now Vincent Corleone. You are the Godfather. Everyone rushes to kiss his ring. The only stipulation that Michael gives him is that he has to, definitely for real this time, stop going out with Mary, aka Michael's daughter, aka Vincent's first cousin. And Vincent really cares for Mary, but he goes along with it because he really wants to be the Godfather.
Yep. Now we have the Opera House, and Anthony, he's going to be performing, so Michael's in attendance, but there's also some assassins that Vincent knows about, so he's got some of his goons going around, and at the same time, Altabello, he's going to be at this opera, so Connie, she has a plan to exact revenge. She gives Altabello a poison cannoli. I love this, like, sweet old man. Sorry, he's not a sweet old man.
No.
But he's this, like, he's kind of a cute old man, and he's, like, he's chomping on like a little kid. It's kind of like he is really enjoying this cannoli. And God, he's watching him, and there was just something, I don't know, comical about it, that he's just like licking his fingers and enjoying it, and then you just see him like slumped over in his chair. I don't know. I found it somewhat comical.
It is comical. I mean, after 3 of these movies, you see people gunned down all the time. You see people, strangled to death with piano wire. Watching someone eat a poisoned cannoli, it is a little funny. He doesn't trust Connie when she first hands him the cannoli, and he makes her take a bite, and she takes a tiny little nibble, and then he's like, okay, fine, and then he eats it. It is funny. But this opera scene really dragged on. Like, it's a fair comparison to, like, those other scenes from the first 2 movies, the bloodbath montages, basically. Except this opera scene goes on and on and on. I kind of felt like I was watching an entire opera while this thing plays out.
Oh, they definitely show way too much of the opera, but I didn't look into it. But I will bet you that whatever was going on in that opera is symbolic of what's going on. I think that's probably why they showed all of that.
It definitely is. You don't need to look it up. I mean, there's a part where the woman watches someone die and she like puts a thing over her head, like in mourning, like a shawl, I guess. And then at the end of the movie, Connie does that exact same thing. They're going for the parallels, not at the opera, but earlier when Michael and Kay are walking around Italy, they walk by like a puppet show. And in the puppet show, the father kills his daughter. It stabs her through the heart because the daughter is dating her cousin, which is, an exact parallel of what's happening with Michael's life and Mary and everything. It's really, really fucking on the nose, which is annoying. But in this opera scene, the assassins who are there to kill Michael don't. They fail during the show. Michael's assassins who go to kill like the Vatican guys who messed up the Immobiliare deals, those work. Also in the montage is the death of the new Pope who is poisoned. And that one is like not part of the Corleones winning because they like the new Pope. So when the new Pope dies, that's like a bad thing for them. So it doesn't kind of fit in the model of like these revenge.
All the pieces coming together at the end. Yeah.
Exactly. And then while they're outside of the play after the opera, they kind of figure, yay, they sort of dodge the bullet literally and metaphorically. But then the assassin goes and shoots Michael. It looks like he shoots at him twice, and once maybe hits him in the shoulder or something, but the other bullet hits Mary in the chest, and she dies. Vincent immediately kills that guy who shot Mary, but Michael's daughter has been killed. It wasn't being close to Vincent that was dangerous. That's what everyone was saying the whole movie. It was being close to Michael was dangerous. And she's dead, and it is a heartbreaking moment. then it just skips ahead to like this little epilogue scene where Michael's sitting in front of this Sicilian villa and he keels over and dies. And that moment is one of the few things I remembered about this movie, that it just ends with Michael in a chair keeling over and dying. And it's like a very anticlimactic, like weird, dumb ending. It's just there to show you that he dies alone. He doesn't get assassinated. After all the attempts on his life, he makes it through. He just dies, sitting on this chair. But I don't know. It doesn't have like a real impact. I didn't think. I thought it was just like oh yeah, then he dies, kind of like afterthought.
Yeah, I mean, that is the ending of this version of the film. I'll talk about that in a moment. Before I get to that, what do you think, Al? 1990's The Godfather Part III. Does it stand the test of time?
I really didn't enjoy this movie. I found it to be tedious and annoying, and as confusing as the plots were in Part 1 and Part 2, I just don't get this real estate thing at all. Also, there's no resolution to it. They don't end the movie with what happens with the deal, and I don't really care about it any which way. I'm not really invested in the romance between Mary and Vincent because it just really creeps me the fuck out, to be honest. And honestly, that bothers me more than Sofia Coppola is not a great actor. I mean, no, she's not as great of an actor as Diane Keaton or Talia Shire, but, whatever. That's not the biggest problem with this movie, I don't think. I think the movie does work in theory in some of the ways that it's like, after killing Fredo, Michael is destroyed by that even many, many years later. I like that they explore that. I like that they explore what that did to him psychologically, mentally, but it's just not enough. Even the idea of a plot that revolves around like corruption in the Catholic Church, honestly, I don't really know my church history, but in 1990, when this movie came out, was that ahead of its time? Was that like before all of the sex scandals were wide out in the open? Maybe. Like, that's interesting. It's kind of a bold move to point a finger at the Vatican and say, these guys are corrupt. Maybe that was a big deal in 1990. Maybe it wasn't. I don't really know. But I think that's interesting. But how it ties into the Corleone family, it doesn't really work. It doesn't make sense. It's a square peg, round hole thing. Also, it's a weird thing that this movie was made 16 years after Godfather Part II, but it takes place like more than 20 years after. So Al Pacino and all the characters are like aged up, and it just looks a little weird. It looks like Al Pacino in old man makeup. Like, he's older, but they made him look like extra older, and I don't think they did a great job with that. Also, to be fair, the gangster genre, I've realized over the last 3 weeks, it's not my genre. I've seen Goodfellas a million times because my dad and sister loved it. It's just not a thing that really speaks to me. I enjoyed The Sopranos, but I don't seek out these kinds of movies. They're not really my thing. And after watching 3 of them in a row and like about 9 hours of these Godfather movies, I was ready for this to be done. I was ready for the movie to be done. I was ready for this podcast episode to be done. There's other things I want to watch that don't have to do with the Corleones. I was just kind of exasperated by this. So no, it does not stand the test of time. What do you think?
I'll agree with a couple of things you said. One of the good things I really like about this film, they explore the Fredo guilt. That's probably one of the most interesting and unresolved parts of Michael Corleone. Like, what happens to someone once they commit this horrible crime? Even if he gets everything he wanted, financially and his business, this can wreck him with guilt. However, I don't think it's explored enough, actually. I'm not sure I want the entire film wrapped around it, but it seems like there's like a couple good scenes with that, but it's not the tying thing together. We already talked about how Pacino, kind of by now, he's doing a Pacino. Yeah. And while I enjoy that, it doesn't really do justice for this. And there were so many versions of this film that could have come out. So many different ideas. It was going to go in so many different directions. But we talked about this a little bit last week about how they couldn't get Marlon Brando back, so they kind of worked around him. And you know what? That last scene works perfectly fine without Brando. They didn't need him.
Right.
But here they couldn't get Robert Duvall back, so they kind of had to work around that.
I know. I really miss Tom Hagen in this movie.
Yeah, and like, look, it's like, how much could Duvall have asked for? Like, he wasn't getting paid as much as Pacino and Keaton were. Like, maybe he doesn't do as much as them, but like, give him a little bit more. Like, I think it would have been a lot better. This film made a lot of money. Like, whatever the couple million he wanted, like, I think they could have just paid him.
Yeah.
Or given him a couple points on the back end or something. You mentioned it, and I mentioned the last couple of films. I'm very confused by the plots of these films. But in the first two films, I didn't really care because I'm not sure who that guy is, and I'm not really sure who's killing who and who's behind this, but I'm getting the overall story. The problem with this film is this whole Vatican real estate plot, it's not that I couldn't just follow it. I was very uninterested in it.
Yeah.
And I figured if I'm going to watch this film, I'm going to watch the 2021 re-release. And I only watched the beginning and end because I saw that that's the only parts to watch. But there was a re-release of this film called Godfather, Coda, The Death of Michael Corleone. And really, it's very, very similar.
I'm sorry. I just need to interrupt you. So it's The Godfather, Coda, The Death of Michael Corleone? Are there two colons?
No. So it's The Godfather, and it has, you know, those the marionette icon, and where it usually says Part 3, it instead fades in, it just says Coda. And then the whole thing fades to black, and then it says, quote, The Death of Michael Corleone, close quote. So what this means, behind the scenes, Francis Ford Coppola and Mario Puzo, they didn't really want to make a third one. They thought the story was complete, but Paramount wanted more money because it's like, we don't really care about the accolades. We care about the money. Mm-hmm. So they basically got him to do it. And a big problem Francis Ford Coppola has is he says, I don't like this thing Part 3 because I just kind of want to make a spin-off film. Like those first two films, that is the father and son and the juxtaposition of those two and how they're both different but the same person and it works so well together. I think changing it from Part 3 to Coda, it helps it. The opening, it skips all of the Corleone mansion. It goes right to the Vatican. It's a very clear explanation of, I want in on Immobile Internacional. I didn't still quite get everything, but that's what it is. It still ends with him at the villa in Sicily, but he just puts those glasses on and just sits there, and it fades to black. Like he is alone, and he ends up alone, but he doesn't die. Except the movie is called The Death of Michael Corleone.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. If you're going to call the movie The Death of Michael Corleone, then you really should show the death of Michael Corleone.
But it ends with like white text on black that says, when a Sicilian tells you something, it means I wish you a long life. And then it says, a Sicilian never forgets. So what I believe he's saying is actually, when a Sicilian wishes you, I wish you a long life, they're not necessarily saying it as a good thing. I will say one thing we didn't mention, the scream that Michael Corleone yells out is only the scream that a father could have when he sees his daughter killed before him. I mean, that is almost hard to watch, I would say. That was done very well. And I think the death of Michael Corleone, therefore, is he lives a long life, empty and powerless, no Kay. Anthony seems to want nothing to do with him, probably blames him for killing his sister now.
Sure.
That's his quote-unquote death. One thing that might have helped this film a little bit is something I was fascinated to read about. Do you know about Godfather Part 4?
Yeah, that they were talking about it. It was going to maybe be like sort of like Part 2 with a young Sonny rising to power and like aging Vincent, right?
No. Yes, it was going to be Vincent, and he's going to go into narcotics, and it's going to that whole like 90s thing, and it's really going to show probably the fall of the Corleone family. But the juxtaposition was going to be, they were going to get De Niro back. And remember last time the only thing you were upset about is you're like, I like when he kills Dom Fanucci, that's fine. I don't get how he goes from Fanucci to being Brando in the first film? Like, where's that jump? And that's what part 4 was going to do. It was going to show the 30s. They were going to bring De Niro back. And I thought that would have been, that might have helped this film. That might have said, the third one wasn't as good as the first two, but it really set up that brilliant ending. And Mario Puzo died and something, and never happened. And that's a good story. I even think that could be a story worth telling. But getting back to what I said earlier, Coda vs. Part 3, this film, it's not a third part. It's completely unnecessary. I think as a spin-off film, it kind of works a little bit, but overall, it's just not an interesting film. I don't care. I would have been okay with some of the ideas they had, but the finished film, it's just not a story I wound up caring about, Michael Corleone. And it's a shame. It's not as bad as people remember it. It's not a bad film. If it didn't say The Godfather on it and it was just like mob film 1990, it's fine. Fine meaning like, okay, I watched it on HBO one night. Fine. Like, it's no Goodfellas. It's fine. But it's not a hated film, no. But I think because it's part 3, it really does a disservice to it. It doesn't stand up. The first 2 films really today are entertaining films with a little help from Wikipedia. Part 3 is not. Therefore, it does not stand the test of time.
Gotcha. All right. Well, that concludes our series on the Godfather movies. It also concludes every episode that we have ever done or ever will do that starts with the words 200. James, next week is episode 300. I can't believe it. I am really excited.
I'm kind of depressed.
Why?
You're saying we're not going to ever do episode 200,000?
Well, we could.
You said we're never doing an episode number that's ever going to start with 200 again.
200,000 is a different number than 200.
It starts at 200.
Nah, I think that's fine. I am really excited for episode 300, and I almost feel like we don't have to say the name of the movie that we're going to do for episode 300. You should get it. And if you don't, then just tune in next week, and then you'll know.
I agree. Join us next week for the 300th episode, where we'll do a mystery movie for episode 300.
I can't wait. That will be fun. Of course, as always, talk to us at Test of Time Pod, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Follow us on all of the things. Make sure you're subscribed, rate, review. You can email us, thetestoftimepodcast@gmail.com. Love hearing from you. And we'll see you next week for episode 300.
Bye.